everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Way of the Movement Professionals. My name is Maiko Morotani. I am a physical therapist in Los Angeles, California, and someone who's super passionate about educating patients and other physios about the exciting components of the human movement system. Now, I started this video series, The Way of the Movement Professionals, a long time ago, just because one, I get to talk to some of my favorite people from my community. And number two, I'm always interested and curious about how people started on their professional journey and what exciting things they're currently working on. Today, my guest is my friend Jason Stodelle. This episode is going to be particularly interesting for those of you who love golf or who's thinking about or wanting to work with high performance athletes. So please enjoy my conversation with Jason. Jason, thank you so much for being here with me. Are you currently filming this from home? I know you're on the
Yeah,
road a lot.
I'm in my backyard right now, fortunately.
All right, welcome home. And
Yeah.
today, folks, I'm very lucky to be spending a little time with Jason Stodelle. He is a full-time physical therapist for the PGA Tour, and that would be the Professional Golfers Association. And he was also the chief physical therapist for the golf venue at the Paris Olympics this past summer. Now, Jason, Paris was your third Olympics, is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So golf returned to the Olympics in Rio in 2016. So I was there for that one. Then I was in Tokyo for 2020/21, the COVID year. So then, yeah, so Paris was my third one.
That was great. And if folks wanted to learn a little bit more about what all cool things that Jason got to do at the Paris Olympics, I'll put a link with the Jimmy did an excellent interview for the AOPT YouTube channel. So
Yep.
I'll put a link there for that. But today I wanted to get to know Jason as a professional and as a person. And so we'll go a little deep dive into these questions and get to know more about you. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is awesome. It's always great to catch up with you too.
Thank you. And likewise. And I love this origin question. And I think everybody has such different ways of, starting their journey. Jason, how did you first choose physical therapy as your career path?
Yeah. So I was an athlete in high school. Like I think probably a lot of physical therapists were, at least the ones that go into orthopedics. So I played soccer and baseball. I did a lot of snow skiing. And sure enough, I tore my ACL my senior year of high school, had to have surgery, and absolutely fell in love with the profession right off the bat. I had an idea that this is what I want to do. The therapists that I worked with were like the coolest guys I knew at that point in my life. I was 17, they were like 25, so they were like the cool guys. And I did all my rehab, and I'd hang around the clinic even after therapy was done, and I just hang around and fold towels or clean whirlpools or do whatever I could just to hang out with those guys. And then shortly thereafter applied, went to college and majored in pre-physical therapy, and the rest was history. But it started off as a personal injury, and I think that's probably a common story for a lot of PTs.
Yeah, the joke these days that you might get on the wait list if you have one ACL tear, but
Right.
you get early decision if you get two ACL tears.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Oh my gosh. Now, is it correct that you also an athletic trainer?
Yeah. Yeah. So I went to the undergrad, and I went to college at the University of Miami in Coral Gables, Florida. And I did their athletic training program there, which at the time was, they called it the internship based route, which isn't even available anymore. But so I did all my athletic training hours in undergrad, and originally was as a backup in case I didn't get into physical therapy school right away. So I did everything I needed to do except take the boards. And then when I got into physical therapy school at WashU, once I got to class, I noticed a lot of my classmates were already athletic trainers. So I took the boards for athletic training when I was in PT school. and that allowed me to cover football games and make a little money on the side while I was in PT school. And I've kept my athletic training certification up since then. So technically, I was an athletic trainer before I was a physical therapist, but not by much.
Wow, that's amazing. To be a full-time physical therapy student and doing outside work, which
Yeah,
also adds to your clinical on the field experience. Those are very valuable hours that you have.
yeah, for sure. And it was tough. I mean, you remember how PT school was. Like you're studying several hours a day, and it's, oh, by the way, I got to spend 4 hours at the local high school for football game tonight. You get it done, and we had a good group. There's probably 5 or 6 athletic trainers in my class in PT school that we kind of leaned on each other a little bit and studied together and sucked it up together. And we got through it. It was good though. Good experience, good practical experience early on. In addition to the clinical experiences with PT school, that gets obviously very early hands-on experience. I think is super valuable as a young PT/athletic trainer.
Wow. So actually don't know where you're from, Jason. And so sounds like you went to undergrad in Florida and then
Yeah,
your PT school in Missouri. Where are you from and where did you grow up?
yeah, Southern California. So neither A nor B. So I grew up. I'm here in Southern California right now. I live now in the town that I grew up in just east of you in LA. So if you drove from your house to Palm Springs, you drive right by my house. So
Oh my gosh. Okay,
yeah,
great.
I live in the Inland Empire in a little town called Ukaipa. That's where I am now, and that's where I grew up.
Excellent. So you have that area is like golf heaven and
Yeah,
tennis heaven too.
yeah,
So
it is. It's good. I see. So when I'm not on the road with the tour, I see a lot of private clients, and there's a lot of business for me in this area, which is good.
that is wonderful. Now, getting into your current work, how
Yeah.
long have you been working on the PGA Tour?
Yeah. So week after next, I'll do my last tournament of the season, and that'll be the end of my 16th season with the tour. So it's hard to believe it's been that long, but I started in 2009, and I've been out there ever since. My wife always jokes with me, like she says, "You told me you'd do it for 5 years, and then do something else, and now here we are, 16 years later. I'm still doing it." Yeah, I'm to the point now where I'm top of the food chain in terms of like scheduling and stuff. So I have a chance to create my own schedule, which is a little more friendly for my family and stuff. So it's been that part of it's gotten a little bit easier for me. But yeah, this is the 16th season, which is pretty crazy.
Wow. And just a side note, how many physical therapists work for the PGA Tour?
Yeah, so we have an expanding staff. So just I think last year was the first year we also started covering the Corn Ferry Tour, which is like a minor league tour. And then our staff also covers the Champions Tour. So the 3 major tours here in the States, Corn Ferry Tour, PGA Tour, and Champions Tour, we cover all 3 of those. So we have an expanding program. We probably have, I would say, maybe 12 physical therapists altogether. Some are full-time, some are part-time. That cover, switch. We try to keep it separate, but there is definitely some overlap. We have some of the Corn Ferry guys come up and help us out on the main tour. We help out the Champions Tour guys up there, but just for continuity of care's sake, we try to keep the PTs separate as much as we can. But there's definitely some overlap. So I think about 12 PTs and maybe 6 athletic trainers, and then we have a separate staff of chiropractors as well.
Nice, nice. It is a teamwork, isn't it, to support
Yeah,
all of these athletes?
yeah, for
Um,
sure. And it's been really fun working side by side with chiros. And I know, like when I first started, I wasn't super excited about that, but the chiropractors I work with are some of my best friends now. They're great clinicians. There's a lot of overlap between what they do and what we do. Like I joke sometimes, if you didn't know who was who, if you came and followed us, you'd have no idea who was a chiropractor and who was the physical therapist, because they're doing exercise stuff. We're doing hands-on stuff. There's a lot of co-treatments and intermingling and a lot of overlap.
yeah, certainly. Are there also physicians that travel with the PGA Tour?
Yeah, so we have my boss is the tour's medical director, and he's an MD, and he's the only MD that really travels, and he's not out every week. But we have a local tournament doc that each tournament provides, and he's a local. Usually, it's a general practice physician. And then I would say about half the weeks we also have an orthopedist that's typically on call, and we have good relationships with all of our orthos in whatever city we're in, so we can touch base with them the week before just to double check and say we have a guy that might need an injection next week, or we have a guy that might need an MRI, and so usually we'll go that route. So usually the orthos are sometimes they'll spend time with us at the trailer and at the golf course, but more often it's we'll send our players to their office.
Nice. Now, 16 years,
Yeah.
which is a surprise for your wife, but
Yeah.
can you share your journey of how you got to where you are now with the PGA Tour? And are there certain requirements if folks have similar aspirations?
Yeah, so for me, it was right place at the right time. I actually, as a naive and probably a little too arrogant new grad physical therapist, I sent my resume into the tour, and I knew I knew a guy who knew a guy that was on the tour, and so I sent a resume in. I don't think I'd even graduated PT school at that point, but he actually called me and he's, hey, thanks for the resume, but there's no chance that we're going to hire a new grad physical therapist. But he was good enough to tell me, here's some things you can do to put yourself in position, and gave me some ideas for some continuing education and things like that. And then so I went into private practice for 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years, something like that. And they actually called me out of the blue several years later. I mean, I had long forgotten about even thinking about the PGA Tour. And I had started working at an office out in the desert out where I live now. And I worked with a couple of players separately, and a spot opened up. And I don't know, I think they maybe talked to the therapist that was already there. And so they were like, oh, yeah, I had this resume from 7 years ago. And they gave me a call kind of out of the blue. And it wasn't perfect timing wise because I was, my family was growing. My wife was pregnant with our twins, and it wasn't great, but I was, man, this opportunity might not come around again. So somebody talked my wife into letting me do it. And 16 years later, here we are.
Oh my gosh, talk about, understanding family and that
I know.
support and seizing the opportunity, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things it's sometimes, especially for a position like this, if you wait for the perfect opportunity or perfect time, then sometimes it passes you by. But, if you really want to do it, then you have to make it happen. And when it happens, you have to be ready for it.
And I also think that your first resume that was submitted, despite no clinical experience, I think it definitely showed your drive and your strong interest in wanting to support the golfers. And so that probably helped the first step.
Yeah. And I
And
think it probably got me on their radar a little bit, like it wasn't an entirely new name, so when those players mentioned my name, like, oh yeah, that name rings a bell. That could have been part of it too.
now, I think you mentioned a little bit about a residency in the other talk with AOPT
Yeah.
video. Did you do an ortho residency or sports residency or both?
Yeah. So mine was mostly orthopedic based. And the primary goal is to prepare for the OCS exam. So I'm also a clinical specialist in orthopedics. So I did a almost year-long residency. It was under the Kaiser model, although it was with the company that I was previously employed by. So I had a mentor come to my clinic, and we had the didactic work on, I think we did like one weekend a month. It was like all hardcore kind of academic work. And then the mentor would come to my clinic and we'd see patients together. So that was the residency program that I did, but it was more orthopedic based. And then the end of that, I did my OCS exam.
Oh, the dreaded OCS exam. I
Yeah,
thought I was gonna
exactly.
throw up right
I
after
know,
the
I know.
exam.
That was a tough one. I think if I always joke, like when I have to re-up, every 3 years now, like you have the option of either submitting your portfolio or you can retake the exam. I'm like, there's no way I'm retaking that exam. I'd rather just keep up with the Con Ed and stuff.
True. I was able to renew my OCS, but the next one up, we do have to take the exam again.
Do you really? Oh,
Yeah, got experience all over.
oh man. How are you
Yeah.
studying for that?
It's not till 2030, so I've got
Oh,
a
okay.
little bit of time.
That's good.
my initial one was 2010, and then I just
Yeah.
renewed it in 2020. So
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I
yeah.
gotcha. I don't even know where I would start to study for that. Maybe do another residency. I don't know.
Gosh, and hey, if we happen to be on a similar time, maybe we could
Yeah,
study.
yeah, exactly. That's not a bad idea.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm all for study buddies.
yeah,
Now,
yeah, exactly.
PGA Tour, it sounds like it's not, it's a lot of different tours that you are taking care of.
Yeah. Okay.
How many weeks are you on the road out when you look at a whole year calendar?
Yeah, so one of the good things about our program is we know that we should have next year's schedule done by, the next few weeks, like by for sure by the end of November. So I know in advance, like a year in advance, exactly where I'm going to be. And there's some changes that come up based on staff needs and stuff, but for the most part, I'll know, here in the next few weeks where I'm going to be. And typically, I'm doing about between 16 and this year I did a few more. I'll do up to 20 tournaments a year. My first 10 or so years out, I was doing 27, 28, and it was way too much with the family life balance. So the tour was kind enough to let me take a step back a little bit. And I did 19 this year. My next one will be my 19th. And the reason I did a few more than normal was because of the Olympics. That was a 3-week trip for me to Paris. So that was the main difference. But yeah, I'll do between 16 and 20 events a year basically. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to do most of the ones here in California, Texas, some of the easier travel ones for me. And then I'll still do some East Coast stuff. I'll still do some overseas things, but yeah, for the most part, I try to keep it as local as I can.
Excellent. Now it was back in 2020. I was just scrolling through some of the older photos last night, but this was just about a month before COVID shut down the world.
Yeah, that's
That,
right.
yeah, you were so kind to invite me and my physio friend from
Yeah,
Japan to come and hang out at
right.
the Genesis Invitational at the
Yep.
Riviera Country Club in
Yeah,
Los Angeles.
that's right. That was
And
fun.
that's when I learned that the equipment and the mobile facility are just incredible and top
Yeah.
of the line at the PGA Tour.
Yeah, they're
I
pretty neat.
mean,
And we're always constantly trying to improve it. And as you saw, like we have, all this latest state of the art equipment in there. And every year, like this time of year, we're getting toward the end of our season. We'll have a meeting here pretty soon to discuss which equipment do we need, which equipment is on there that we don't really need. Obviously, space is at a premium for us. So if we don't use it, we get rid of it pretty quickly. And then we have some corporate sponsors for equipment that they might have a new piece of equipment they want to put on our trailer. So we have to make sure, like space wise, we have a good chance to put it on there and things like that. But for the most part, it's as you saw, it's pretty cutting edge and up to date. And since you saw it, we actually added a third facility that we call a recovery center. So as you know, we have the physical therapy trailer, we have the
yeah.
fitness trailer, and then now we have a recovery center. So now they have access, our players have access to 3 cold plunges, an infrared sauna, a bunch of other stuff that they use primarily after their round. They'll jump in the cold plunge afterward just to recover. They'll do the Normatex. They use all the hyperized equipment that we have and things like that. So it's a lot more kind of proactive approach than what it has been in the past. Guys, especially the younger players, are really into staying on top of it and making sure the little nagging injury doesn't turn into a full blown thing where they're missing tournaments and stuff. So they're spending a lot more time on the front end, making sure that these little issues don't become a bigger issue. And we're there to help them with that. And so now, yeah, we probably see out of 150 players, I bet 100 of them come through our facility at some point any given week. It just depends on the week, but yeah, it stays pretty busy for sure.
Yeah. I take it that there are a dedicated crew that, take care of all the equipment, pack them up, and then bring them to the next facility. So
Yeah,
that means that you don't have to lug so much luggage personally when you go travel to the
yeah,
next club.
yeah, correct. So we really don't have to for our stateside events. We don't have to really bring anything because it's all there for us. So then the exception is, so my next tournament is in Cabo San Lucas in Mexico in a couple weeks. Obviously, we don't have the trailers there, so I have to bring most of the stuff that we need. The tournament will provide treatment tables for us and some bands and some basic stuff, but we have to bring a couple of cases full of equipment that the players are used to having access to. I don't know, things like foam rollers, and hypervolts and stuff like that. Like we'll bring a whole catalog of stuff that way. And then we'll have two physical therapists and a chiropractor there, see the players. But that's the exception for those overseas type of events. This week, actually, the tournament is in Tokyo at the Zozo. Obviously, I'm not there this week, but our therapist and chiropractor that are there had to bring all that stuff with them. So it's a bare bones skeleton equipment list, but we have all of our tapes and all of our things for blisters and stuff like that, and then some of the basic equipment as well.
Gotcha. So does that mean the golfers really enjoy coming to the US venues because it's a really nice equipment?
Yeah,
Everything's there.
and I think more importantly, it's a space away from everything that allows them to reset. They know there's no cameras, there's no media where we're set up, so they can come in and just relax and joke around and not have to worry about saying the wrong thing or things like that. In addition to having a consistent space to work out in, to get treated in, I think the other part of it is the sanctuary that we try to set up for them, where they can come in and let their guard down a little bit, especially the higher profile players. They enjoy and appreciate the idea that they can come in and relax and not have to worry about doing an interview or getting asked questions and things like that.
That's perfect because that's what was leading right into my next question is, you probably know the majority of the golfers on the tour, but how do you try to establish that trusting relationship when you meet a new athlete or a new client?
Yes, that's a great question. Obviously, I've been on the tour for a long time, so most of the players give me the benefit of the doubt now. But it was tough as a new guy on tour. In 2009, it took me. I sat in the corner twiddling my thumbs for 6 months while the players waited in line to see the guys that they knew. And then eventually, maybe a player comes in and there's a line for the more experienced guys, but he doesn't have time to wait. So it's okay. I guess I'll use Jason if I need to. And then it's okay. I guess this guy knows what he's doing. And then he just develops from there. And now I'm at the point where, the new golfers that come in, they definitely ask the older guys, okay, who's good, who's not good, and there's some preferences and things like that. So I get the benefit of the doubt now, but it's tough to establish that early on, especially when you're not as experienced as you could be. And then from there, you just try to create that personal connection and help the newer player understand that what they're the golf swing, for example, their bodies and what they need to work on and things like that. And then usually it's a pretty quick process from there.
Now, you are an awesome advocate for the human movement system, and I do believe that this is the crux of us being a physical therapist. And I know from listening to your stories that there's a variety of healthcare professionals that support the golfers on the tour.
Mm-hmm.
But from your perspective, what makes the physical therapist like the key contributor to the golfer's performance?
Yeah, I think the thing that I think separates us from other, whether it's a trainer or a chiropractor, is we work really hard on trying to find underlying causes, and I think that's why the movement system is so valuable in this kind of setting, working with athletes. You can fall in a trap of, especially in the middle of the season, and these guys are playing 5-6 weeks in a row, you can fall in the trap of just treating symptoms and, oh, your back hurts, let's make your back feel better. But it's, I like to take a deeper look at that. Like, let's look and see what's going on with your hips. Let's look and see what's going on with your thoracic spine. Let's see what's going on with your ankle, whatever these underlying causes are. Otherwise, you get in this cycle of, it feels a little bit better because you rubbed on my back, but I went out and played again and now my back hurts again. So until you address these underlying impairments that may be, in other regions like the hips, especially for golfers, you can get in this, fall in the trap of getting the cycle of feel better, then hurts again, feel better, hurts again. All of a sudden, if you start addressing the hip hypomobility or hip weakness or something, now all of a sudden it's okay, man, my back's been bothering me for 2 or 3 months. I did these 2 little hip exercises and now my back feels great. And so that's where we, I think, try to hammer home with our players is, okay, I know your back bothers you, but let's take a look at the hips, for example. And sometimes I'll get them off the table and I haven't even addressed their back directly. And I'll say, get off the table. Let's see how it feels. Like, wait, you haven't even really touched my back. I say, oh no, let's just see how it feels. And they get up and it's, whoa, my back pain's gone, like magic, you know? So I think the answer to your question is I think finding PTs are really good at finding sort of the underlying causes and addressing those and really getting at the crux of what's going to not just make you feel better now, but what's going to prevent this from being a problem 6 months from now or 6 weeks from now.
Yeah, yeah. And you can see Jason just go and deep dive into that.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful to see the whole athlete instead of just looking at their knee or looking at their
Yeah.
low back. Uh, Now, for those of you who don't know, Jason is the primary author for the PT management of the golfer, which was published by the Academy of Orthopaedic Physical Therapy's monograph. What was it like to be the contributor for this monograph? Challenges? We know
Yeah.
what were some of the great things that came out of it?
Yeah. It was a really fun process, but it was one like I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I agreed to do it. So they approached me, I think maybe the fall of 2021. And right after that, I'm like, oh, that sounds great. I'm happy to do it. And then as I start like diving into it, I'm like, man, this is way more work than I thought it would be. And they told me like you can have a co-author or co-authors. And I was like, I can do this myself. And so I dove into it and it took so many hours. And obviously I wanted to do it right. And I had never done any kind of writing project like this anywhere near this significant ever in my career. So it was a huge challenge for me, but super rewarding. It made me second guess or ask questions about myself. Shoot, I've been treating this particular condition this way for years, but the research kind of said that's probably not the best way to do it. And without fully appreciating that side of it, this forced me to take a closer look at what the research says. Obviously, there's not a ton of research on golf, especially high level golfers like I work with every week, but definitely there's some literature out there that says, if their back hurts, you need to look at this. If their hip hurts, you need to look at this. And there were definitely some things in there that I was like, man, I've been missing the boat on that for several years. So from that aspect, it was great for my personal practice and working with the guys. And then, so once I submitted all of it, I don't know if you know the process, but I submitted it. It took me like, gosh, close to probably 2 full years, maybe a year and a half. We submitted, then there's a lot of back and forth between the editors and myself, and I'd submit it. They'd hammer me with, you didn't cite this. There's no evidence for that. So I'd go back and have to, oh yeah, I guess that was my opinion on that. So let's change it. And there's a lot of back and forth. And then the final process was like, they did a series. So there was one on running, there was one on swimming, there's one on overhead athletes. So there were other authors that I had no idea about they were also doing their own papers. And then we got to share and read each other's. And at that point, I realized I was the only one that did it by himself. All the other ones had, there's like 7 co-authors. I'm like, man, I should have brought more people on board. It would have been like a third of or a quarter of the work. But I just was selfishly or whatever. I was like, I could do this myself. And turns out like everybody else was like, oh, here's my 5th co-author. So I think I could have, looking back, I could have brought in some more people on board to share the challenge with. But overall, it was an awesome experience. A ton of work, but super gratifying. And I think hopefully the readers appreciate it and you learn something from it. And just the quick background, the way I approached it was, what would I like to have known as a new grad PT that didn't have any real idea about the golf swing? So, for the readers that maybe aren't as experienced with golf specifically, hopefully they'll find it useful. And what as a PT do you need to know to start working with higher level golfers?
Yeah, that's great. I highly recommend if it's anything that Jason worked on, go get him.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Now, on a fun side, do you have a favorite golf venue or tournament out of all the places that you have experienced, and why would you pick that place?
Yeah, yes, I get asked that question a lot, and I feel like it changes a lot. So definitely my new answer to that is Paris. I absolutely love the city. That's the first time I'd ever been to Paris or France, and we had a ball. I was able to bring my wife for the first half of the trip. I was there for almost 3 weeks, so my wife was there for about 10 days, and we had an absolute ball. Obviously, I had to work, but we'd meet in Versailles after work and find a cool little cafe and had a blast. So probably Paris is my new answer. As far as like regular stops, I love, like I work the Masters every year at Augusta National Golf Club in Augusta, Georgia. Is a just a spectacular venue. You can watch it on TV. It's everything it's cracked up to be and more on, TV doesn't quite do it justice. I love Pebble Beach. That's up in Monterey, Northern California. That's a really cool kind of magical spot on the ocean there. I love Tokyo, even though I didn't really get to get the full Tokyo experience because of COVID. I spent 17 days in Tokyo and got to know the golf course and my hotel room really well, but not much other than that. So I'm hoping to maybe go back to Tokyo and spend some more time there. But those are probably the top of my list right now. Rio was cool. I can't leave Rio out. Rio's a cool spot too.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll get to the next Zozo.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And actually get to see a little bit of it for sure. But as you know, as you can imagine, like obviously we're there to work, so I don't get to spend a ton of time like sightseeing and stuff. Yeah, we're there. Like I said, I get to see the golf course quite a bit, but that's usually about it. Typically, we don't have time to go out and hang out and stuff. But for the most part, those venues that I just mentioned are probably top of that list.
That's right, because it sounded like it was like a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You're putting in,
Yeah,
long
and
hours each day.
even earlier than that. Usually, we're there. We have somebody there on site at 5:30 in the mornings because usually the first tee times are 7. So the guys are getting there hour and a half to 2 hours before their rounds. So we have guys waiting for us oftentimes at 5 a.m. So we can stagger it a little bit. So like I might do 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. or maybe 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. or something like that. But you're talking a minimum of 11 or 12 hours a day for 6 days in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's a lot of work, a lot of hours.
Now, how about yourself? Do you play golf, Jason?
I like to. I don't get to play a lot of golf. I like playing. Unfortunately, my kids are not really into it, so I don't have that excuse of taking them to the golf course. So I'll play a little bit on the road when I get a chance. I got asked to play in a tournament on Monday like next week, and that'll be my first round in like a few months. So it could be a disaster. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna probably go hit balls this afternoon. That'll be the first time I've even really touched a golf club in a few months. I'll let you know how that goes. But I love playing. I just don't get a chance to play very often, and I'm just too busy right now.
I'm sure your form is going to be great because you have great visualizations of
Right,
looking at beautiful forms day in and
right.
day out.
We joke with that when I do get to play. I'm probably a little bit better than I should be, just because of the osmosis that happens hanging around the top guys and listening to them talk about, how'd you hit that bunker shot on 13? And like just hearing that conversation, like I start visualizing and maybe somehow I'll go out there and recreate that a little bit somehow. I don't know.
That's great. And lastly, I'm really looking forward to your 2 presentations coming up in November and December for the
Yeah,
Movement System Monthly group in
yeah,
Japan. And
yeah. It's gonna be awesome.
if you could say a casual greeting or a shout out to the Japanese physios who be learning from you 2 months in a row, because
Yeah,
Japanese people, they love golf so much. And so
that's awesome.
your sessions are going to be super valuable.
Yeah, cool. Well, I look forward to meeting everybody. I met several physical therapists there in Tokyo at Kasumi Gaseki Golf Course there during the Olympics. So maybe a handful of those faces will be around on this call. But I look forward to seeing you guys. Can't wait to talk and hit me with your best questions. We'll talk a lot about golf. We'll talk a lot about life on the PGA Tour and how physical therapists can treat the highest level golfers in the world. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait.
That's great. And if people wanted to get in touch with you or find you on the internet, what's the best way?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, probably most active on LinkedIn, and I try to answer as many personal messages as I can on LinkedIn. So that's probably the best way. You can find me on Facebook. I'm not super active on any of them, so I'm not doing my weekly whatever, but I'll post some stuff from different golf tournaments and whatnot. So try to keep it somewhat interesting. But yeah, reach out, find me on LinkedIn, find me on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, but I don't really check that account as much. But hit me up on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jason. And we will see you shortly next month. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I look forward to seeing everybody.